Welcome to episode 6 of the Shiny Things Improv podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Blackton, and this is a place where I get to pick the brains of all my favourite improvisers. Today's guest is David Elms, who, after a decade teaching at the Free Association in London, is now also running his own workshops through his brand Leap Day. David is no doubt one of the legends of the FA, having been a member of the Classico team, the Cartel, and more recently with the success of his solo improv show, David Elms Describes a Room, which just finished a 5-night sellout run at Soho Theatre. I found David's stripped-back approach to improv really refreshing and inspiring, and he's such an entertaining person. I had so much fun chatting to him. Here's a taste of what we've got coming up.
The audience are dumb babies. You want scenes where they're like, oh, he's about to do that thing again? I think he's about to do it. Yay, he did that thing again. And everybody laughs. This might be controversial, but I think justification is not essential. They're like, why does my character love this apple? You know, it's like, just keep eating the apple and make noises of enjoyment and everyone in the audience is going to laugh. The David Elms Describes a Room show is basically a workshop disguised as a show. It ain't rocket science. But to get to that simple point takes a lot of unlearning. You got the scoop. 7 dials, baby. We're going to the West End. God, we're going deep here.
David Elms, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. What is your confidence level that this is actually being recorded? Because as I saw you press the record button, I thought, I know that in the back of your mind you'll be thinking could not be recorded. This is just nothing. Or you feel like you've done it enough times now that you're like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, about halfway through the show, I'll have a panic and
Yeah.
I'll be like, oh my God, imagine if this isn't being recorded, and I'll look at it.
Imagine if this isn't, because it's going to be gold. It's going to be such an important record of not just improv, but our times, what it was like to be alive on the 29th of May 2025. No, I trust you. You look like you know what you're doing. You got all the kit.
You've been improvising for many, many years now. Where did it all start?
Well, it is many, many years. I was very lucky that I went to Edinburgh University, or as they call it, the University of Edinburgh. Do you hear about that? They paid hundreds of thousands of pounds to rebrand, and they ended up with the University of Edinburgh. Anyway, money well spent. I went to that uni, and there just happened to be a short form improv troupe there called the Improverts. Shout out the Improverts. That had been going for years. I think it was started in the late 80s, early 90s by a student who was Canadian and was at Edinburgh on an exchange or there for a year. And they started one because obviously in North America, there's an improv troupe in every household. And it stuck. And just because of that, I think it's the longest running student improv thing in the UK. And I just kind of fell into it. I think partly because at the time there wasn't like a version of the Cambridge Footlights, like most unis have, like some kind of sketch troupe or something like that, some kind of comedy society. But there wasn't one at Edinburgh. I think one got started while I was there, but it was very new. But what they did have was this improv troupe. And I did a play at the theatre there, Bedlam Theatre. God, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much detail I've gone into already. I told myself on the way here that I wasn't going to waffle. But it's all super relevant and it's very interesting. Just fell into it, and it was such a lucky gift because the Improverts do shows every Friday of term time and every night of the Fringe. And during term time, they also rehearse, or they did when I was there. I'm sure they still do. Rehearsed twice a week, did the show on the Friday night, and did a public workshop on Saturday mornings that anyone could come to, which meant that the whole time I was at Edinburgh, I was doing improv 4 times a week for hours at a time. So it just became completely normal for me. And it also meant that I got loads of hours in because I ended up being at Edinburgh for 5 years because I failed my German degree. Great choice by me. So by the time I graduated, I'd just done loads of short form, which was great fun, always killed. I was wearing matching T-shirts and, hey guys, we're the Improverts and blah, 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 all that happy clappy stuff. yeah, I'm going to stop there because otherwise I'll just talk for an hour. That's my start. That's how I got my start. Yeah.
And where did it develop from there? Did you carry on straight out of uni?
I left uni in 2013, I think it was, and came back to London. And for a while, I didn't do any improv, partly because I just didn't know anyone in London who was doing it. The FA didn't exist yet. And there was something called Monkey Toast. And at the time, I thought, I'm not going to do something called Monkey Toast. That sounds so cringe and lame. And so I'm not going to do that. And at the time, I started doing stand-up and other things. So maybe I just kind of thought, oh, my improv times are behind me. Because I also didn't really know much about long form. I kind of only knew about short form. So yeah, I just sort of didn't do it for a bit. And then I went to New York on holiday, lucky me. And I was staying with a friend who lived in New York at the time. And he took me to UCB to see ASCAT, which, if you're not familiar, is like one of their headline shows where they get like a guest monologist. It's basically like Jacuzzi or This Doesn't Leave the Room at the FA. And I saw just a night of really good long-form improv. Zach Woods was there, and he was so funny and just unbelievably brilliant and quick, and I was having a great time. And I also had a really arrogant, self-involved thought while I was watching it, which was, I can do this, and no one knows that I can do it. You know, which, what an arrogant little shit. But I was just thinking like, yeah, everyone's having a great time and I could do this and I'm not doing it. And also maybe I watched it and I was like, I miss improv. It reminded me how nice it is and how fun it is. So when I came back to London, my friend Freya Slipper, shout out Freya, had just done one of the first FA courses. So she was like, you should do this, you'll love it, at the Free Association. So I think I was either the second or third intake of students at the FA. And my teachers were Graham and Mike. And yeah, absolutely loved it. And yeah, I've basically been doing it on average once a week since then. But I think that start of just getting to do it loads every week meant I was totally spoiled. And it meant that then it seemed strange not to be doing it. Like, what? You mean I don't get to just have playtime with my friends all the time? Because obviously the people that I did improverse with, I spent so much time with them and so much time playing with them that, you know, they're my dearest, oldest friends. I married one of them. 2 of them are, 3 of them, 4 of them. I mean, quite a few of them are godfather, godmother to my children. So yeah, it was just like a great boot camp of just, if it is true that thousands of hours makes you good at something, I was lucky to get quite a few hours in so young.
How do you think starting with so much short form and sort of getting so comfortable with that, how do you think that informed your long form when you started doing that?
Yeah, great question. I mean, my mind changes about this all the time. And I think I've gone through waves of thinking short form is, you know, isn't as good, or that it's, you know, I don't know. I think there have been times where I've gone on record being like, long form is the best. Short form is, you're getting laughs from bad improv and all this stuff. But I think one thing it helped me with is you've got to come out and just be super confident, because it's not a subtle show, right? It's like, hey, we're here to entertain you. We're going to make you laugh every 3 seconds. So just having to come out. I mean, when we did the Fringe, the show's on at midnight. A lot of drunk people and a lot of tourists and random people. And coming out and just being like, hey, I don't have a script, but you're in safe hands and we're going to have a great night. And having to host the show and having to, you know, take big swings. And that is one thing that short form does kind of make you do, is make big, bold moves that often don't work. And so I think by the time I was doing long form, I didn't mind so much if something didn't work, because I was so used to just like falling flat on my face in front of people and the show carrying on regardless, you know. But I see a lot of people who come from short form and it takes them a long time to shake that instinct to go for the big gag, and because they've trained themselves to be trying to get laughs all the time, which I completely understand. So I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily a good or a bad thing, but they are two different things for sure. Wow, profound.
You did quite a few shows in Edinburgh, solo shows and group shows.
Yeah. I did 8 years on the trot. I think that's, again, being at Edinburgh Uni and not having to get a flat specifically for going to the Fringe. So I just had my student flat. And again, I was spoiled and I was like, I'm Edinburgh, I'm going to do the Fringe. Easy. So yeah, did some stand-up shows, did some sketch shows, did some shows where I was acting in other people's stuff, wrote a play, did some mixed bills, did all the kinds of things you can do when you're in your 20s and you don't have any kids, or, you know, you can just keep trying stuff. But yeah, again, I was lucky to have that experience and do the Fringe in such a youthful and low stakes way. I'm going to the Fringe this year for the first time in 8 years, and it feels very different. It feels like the stakes couldn't be higher, and, you know, yeah.
Are you taking up your show, David Elms Describes a Room?
I am, yeah.
Because that you recently did a run at Soho Theatre, which I believe sold out.
It did, yeah.
And it's quite an amazing thing to have achieved with that show. It's a show that is just you. It's a solo improv show. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what that's like to do? Absolutely.
I could talk about this all day. It is a solo improv show in that I'm the only one on stage. But, you know, when people hear that it's a solo improv show, I think they imagine that I'm doing improv for an hour by myself, which I'm not really. It's not like an hour-long scene. The first 40 minutes is me talking to the audience. And if you do know about improv, most shows you have a short opening. If it's a premise-based show, you have a short opening. Maybe that's a monologue. Maybe it's a conversation with the audience. Maybe it's all kinds of things. And that is to generate ideas for the scenes. And then you have the scenes. So normal show would be 5 to 10 minute opening, 40 minutes of scenes. This is just the other way around. So it's a 40-minute opening where, taking audience suggestions, I build a mimed room on stage, all with the audience's ideas, and then I do a 10-minute scene at the end. So really, it's only about 10 to 15 minutes of improv, and the rest is kind of crowd work, really. It's just kind of facilitating the audience to do the opening for me. And then, yeah, hopefully that made sense.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen it. It's quite a mesmerizing thing to watch this incredibly detailed room appear before you as you go through the show. And then to see you come in and improvise within that is also, it's just so satisfying to watch. How do you approach that improvised bit? Do you have to force yourself not to be thinking about what you're going to do as you go through that show, or do you start to think about ideas?
Yeah, I think I don't plan out what the scene is going to be. I think that would be impossible. I'd have to have like two brains, one that was doing that and one that was building the room. So I try to start the scene having not really any plan, and then I just kind of, almost in a clown type way, I just kind of go into the room and start interacting with things. And then sometimes things will naturally connect, or one thing will lead to another, and maybe there's a little narrative, maybe not. But really it's just me walking around in silence, just like miming, picking things up, and people laughing because they can remember what it is. But I will confess that when I'm describing the room, yes, sometimes ideas do occur to me, not about when I'm going to do certain things in the scene, but if someone says there's a violin, obviously I'm thinking, oh, well, that will be fun to play the violin. Or if there was a show last week where there was a cactus, and then, which was up against a wall, and then behind the cactus, up high on the wall, there was a bag hanging on a hook. And I thought, well, that'll be funny. I'll try to get the bag down, but the cactus will be in the way. So I do have some ideas, but I try. It's not a conscious thing. It's more like something will occur to me as to how to play with that object, how to interact with it. But I don't, and I don't think you could plan out what the scene is. That would be really impressive. But I also think it wouldn't be as good, because I think I imagine part of what's fun about watching this scene is that it is me kind of discovering the scene rather than following through on a plan, which is what's fun about improv.
Are you starting to think about whose room this is as you go through it?
A little bit. The show has kind of changed a tiny bit in the 3 years I've been doing it, which is I used to get the audience to talk more about the person during the describing. So we used to start to name the person and talk about their life and the stories behind the objects and things like that, so that then when it came time to do the scene, everyone could kind of know who this person was. But recently I've been not doing that. I think because I quite like the ambiguity of everyone in the audience is imagining their own, is filling in that gap for themselves. Maybe that's just me being lazy. And I'm sure some people miss when we used to do that. But yeah, I feel like, well, the big change in the show over the 3 years is when I first did it, I did much more work. I did a lot of describing myself, and then the audience did some. And then now I don't do anything. I might say, there's a table, and on the table is. But the first time I did it for 20 minutes, and I did everything. I just got one object from the audience. And now the audience do everything, and I feel like part of when we used to talk about the person, that tended to be me adding details. And I just really like the idea of completely handing over the reins to the audience and me not. I feel like whenever I describe something, the audience, there's a slight feeling of like, oh, hey, that's cheating, or hey, we want to do that. This is our room. I don't know. Maybe I'll go back to describing the person, but sometimes it's obvious from the things that get described, but often it's kind of comes together in the scene, or doesn't. Sometimes it's really ambiguous. It's just like a cipher, a blank person moving around.
Do you prefer the feeling of being on stage alone or with a team?
I do get a real kick out of solo improvising. I think it's a totally different thing, because when there's just one person on stage, everyone's focus is completely on you. And that means you can do very, very little, and it still is being picked up by everybody. When there's two people, automatically the attention is divided, things will get missed. When there's just one person on stage, you can kind of just move your hand in a tiny gesture, and everyone is picking up on it. And there's something really nice about just existing in the space and being able to be so slow and quiet and still, and that's really fun. And I love as well that often in the room show, I'll do something so small and the whole audience will laugh, and that's a really great feeling. And it's mainly just because they're remembering something that happened when we were describing the room. It's not like what I did was actually funny. So, we described a particularly weird painting, let's say, and then in the room, I'll just be in the room, and then I'll just look at where that painting was and do the tiniest little expression of like, and the whole room's laughing. And that's fun. You don't really get to do that when you're in a scene with another person. But obviously being in a scene with another person is super fun, and because you can be surprised by the other person, and when you get into a real connected flow with that person, it's really fun. So that was a really long non-answer, but hopefully that does spell out some of what's fun about doing improv by yourself. I think everyone should give it a go, because it does teach you. It teaches you how little you actually need to do to keep an audience engaged, for sure. It would shock you how little you can do.
That actually leads me on to my question about a workshop that you ran recently called Slow, Stupid and Obvious, How to Be Less Quick, Witty and Inventive on Stage. And I imagine that sort of is a similar area that you're exploring, where you have to do less, basically.
Yeah. I think that a lot of people come to improv and they think that improv is about being quick and witty and inventive, maybe because what they're familiar with is short form. You know, a lot of people come to improv and all they know is whose line is it anyway, or they've seen the Improverts or something similar, right? And then you come to long form, and those assumptions are what leads you to, you know, freaking out or not being comfortable on stage. And I think we all go through that process, and it's an unlearning. It's not a learning. It's not like you need to learn how to be slow and stupid, but you have to kind of try and forget all the additional rules that you've decided apply to improv, which actually don't. If you think of your favorite improvisers or your favorite performers of any kind, the thing that they will all have in common is that they seem very comfortable on stage. And you might say, oh, that comfort comes from experience, but it actually comes from what experience teaches you, which is you don't need to be doing as much as you think you need to do. You don't need to fill the silence. You don't need to make the audience laugh every second. You don't need to do clever scenes, basically. Clever scenes are fun and great, but they're hard to do. And why would you want to make things harder for yourself? Make scenes easier for yourself. Make the audience look at you and think they're having a great time and this looks easy.
I often come off stage and think back on my scenes and I'm like, I tried to make such a complicated choice there when actually it would have been way more helpful for the scene if I'd just made the easy next choice.
Yeah.
That was just right there in front of me the whole time.
Yeah.
And instead I was thinking, God, I've got to, what's the interesting choice to make here? And then I'm operating in another part of my head instead of just going, oh, we'll just make the next choice. Is that something that you can train yourself to do over time?
Again, I think it's untraining. It's like unlearn this need that you've got to do something clever. Scenes with game, so scenes that have a comedic pattern in them, it is peekaboo for adults. There's not anything more complicated than that. The audience are dumb babies. It's one of the weird things about improv, which is you would think that improv is funny because it's unscripted, so the audience gets big surprises. But actually, ideally, what you want is a scene where everybody in the room knows what's about to happen. So actually, it's not a surprise. You want scenes where they're like, oh, he's about to do that thing again? I think he's about to do it. Yay, he did that thing again. And everybody laughs in the same way that babies will laugh at peekaboo. So it's not about surprise. It's not about, oh, I'm actually going to do something really clever here. It's about, oh, you guys found that a little bit funny? Here, let me do it again. That's it. At its simplest, that's how I think about pattern anyway, is just cover your face, as in rest the game, and then just do that same thing again, and the audience will thank you for it. We don't need some clever linguistic, intellectual thing to happen. If you can do that, great. You're very clever and quick. But the audience don't actually need it. That's what I think anyway.
Something I've also noticed a lot recently, coaching and also my own scenes, is how often we get into this negotiation and sort of as though like we each want to justify our position within the scene, and it just ends up being this negotiation instead of just getting on with the fun of the scene. And it's so common and such an instinctual thing that I feel in myself wanting to, and I'm actively trying not to do it. How do you approach that?
Well, this might be controversial, but I think justification is not essential. I don't think it's... I'm even increasingly thinking that POV is kind of great if that works for you and you can quickly understand that. But for most people, it's too intellectual an approach to something that it should be simple and fun. And that if we've got a pattern of unusual behavior, I'm not sure the audience necessarily needs to know why. Might be nice to know, but I think this negotiation or debate, or I know people call it like lawyering up or whatever you want to call it, is why in most improv scenes that you see, you get about 1.5 plays of the game on average. We should be hitting way bigger numbers than that. And it's because the first move happens and you spend ages debating that, interrogating it, justifying it. You start adding way too much detail, everything gets really complicated, the game becomes too clever, the point of view becomes too abstract. And then you manage to get through that somehow. Someone suggests what the next move could be or might be without actually doing it, and then the scene gets swept. Rather than someone does something, not this again, I'm sorry, let's get on with the scene, let's cover our face, and then let's do something else. I'm a big believer in scenes where people behave rather than debate. And I think that's the debating happens partly because the intellectualization of game, if that's a thing, that has come from people kind of putting POV up on this pedestal of like everything we do has to be driven by that, and I should need to be able to articulate it immediately, rather than I'm going to do one thing, then I'm going to do something else. That's going to tell me what the pattern is, and then the rest of the scene is going to write itself, because once you've got that pattern, I know what the third move is, the fourth move, the fifth move. Easy. I also get why you would teach people through POV, because if you can get it, great. It makes a lot of sense. But I think for a lot of people, they just never get it. And then they're in scenes trying to do something that they don't know how to do. And it just becomes, they're like, why does my character love this apple? You know, it's like, just keep eating the apple and make noises of enjoyment, and everyone in the audience is going to laugh. You don't need to crack out that character's diary and say, "Dear diary, I ate an apple again, and it was because of these reasons." Yeah. God, we're going deep here. But yeah, I'm not saying don't justify, and I'm not saying don't use POV, but I'm also saying the audience doesn't give a shit. They're a bunch of dumb babies. This apple. Not this again. I'm sorry, you're right. Let's just enjoy our lunch. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. Oh my God, this apple. This apple is so good. Would you stop it with the apple? I'm sorry, yeah, I'm sorry. You know what? I'm done with the apple. Apple is going away. How's oh yeah, blah, 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 blah. God, I missed that apple. Right? Who's that guy? We don't know who that guy is. What's his point of view? No idea. He just likes apples. And if we can just, all the audience is thinking is, eat the apple. Enjoy it more. Yeah? The audience is not thinking, but what's the broader POV? How is he going to bring this back for a second beat? I don't know. What's the analogous thing going to be? Audiences, they're just babies. They just want to see you do the same thing again.
You have recently launched your own improv academy, would you call it?
Academy. Yeah, why not? Yeah, it's super fun. It sort of was an accident. I took a big swing and I quit my safe corporate day job this time last year. And my vague plan was somehow make a living from playfulness, because it's something I really believe in. So my initial plan was just to try to do corporate training work, because that's what my day job had been in, and I've done, a lot of teaching improv, and I think that really the thing that I'm actually good at is facilitation, which is why really the David Elms Describes a Room show is basically a workshop disguised as a show, because really what I'm doing is facilitating rather than performing. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try and make a living as a facilitator. So I'll do corporate work. So I built the website, Leap Day, productive playfulness, yada, yada, yada. And then for a while, I had been trying to get a workshop on through the FA about the room show, just doing solo improv. And for one reason or another, it just was taking a while to get the room or the slot or whatever. And then I realized, I've got this website. I could just book a room myself and sell tickets to come to the workshop. So I did that, and people came, and it was really fun, and I got to keep all the money. And I was like, this is fun. So I'll do another workshop. So the first one I did was improvising by yourself. Second one I did was slow, stupid, and obvious. And people came to that. And I started to get a real enjoyment out of, running workshops, but using my language. And the FA syllabus is great. I taught the FA for 8 years. I think it really works. I think it's wonderful. But, when you've been doing improv 15 years and when you've been teaching for nearly 10 years, you just do develop your own way of thinking about things and describing things. And so being able to run classes where you can do that is really enjoyable and rewarding. And also because I'm setting the kind of syllabus, as it were, I can change my mind about things. I got a course which is about 20 hours and I've run it 4 times, and each time I've run it, I've done it slightly differently based on who's in the class, how it's going, based on what comes up in each one. It's really nice to be able to actually give more attention to one thing or another, or even to have moments where I say, you know what, you're right, this is wrong, and actually it's this. And so yeah, it's just been super rewarding. So what started out as me just trying to do one workshop is now, we've done dozens, and we've got a course. We don't do levels, not doing levels. There's no such thing as a beginner in improv. And I also think you can learn everything you need in 20 hours. So I'm not going to be doing that, not stretching it out. And it's a lot of fun. And if I'm plugging, I might as well plug. From September, so at the moment the classes are all running out of Theatre Delhi, which is a wonderful resource. But from September, everything's going to be happening out of Seven Dials Playhouse, which is a theatre on Seven Dials in Covent Garden, the West End, Mondays and Tuesday nights, which is really exciting.
Yeah, fantastic. Where do you see it going?
Who are you, my mother? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's snowballed from last summer to now. I say that as if it's gone massive. It hasn't, but it's definitely keeping me busy. We've got monthly jams, which are full and fun. We've got a choir, which is really fun. Makes no money, but is a joy. And a small, dare I say it, community is starting to form, which is kind of the thing that I was most excited about, of people that are playful and want to get in a room with other adults and play. I think I care more about that element than I do putting together teams and shows and things like that, because I also think that there's as much value in doing some improv in a closed room as there is in, being on a team or being in a show. I guess what I'd love for it to happen is, I don't know. I'm just kind of enjoying it as it is at the moment. So I've booked in Mondays and Tuesdays from now until Christmas, which is kind of as much as I can get away with, given I've got 2 young kids, and I'm also meant to be doing 3 or 4 other jobs. So yeah, this was a very long non-answer, but it's fun.
It's great, and we got the scoop of...
You got the scoop. 7 Dials, baby. We're going to the West End. Yeah, it's central. I mean, the Theatre Delhi is central, but it's a bit of an odd area.
Yeah.
It's, ghost
especially
town.
Especially out of hours.
Ghost town, corporate, city world. Whereas Seven Dials is a theatre, it's a creative space. It's nice to be doing improv in a actual creative building rather than like, a room above a pub or an empty office building. But we'll see. I mean, maybe no one will want to come to that area, but it's fun. And they've got a bar that stays open until 11, which compared to the Theatre Delhi bar is pretty good.
What do you think the hardest thing is about learning improv to perform?
The hardest thing is, I've got a cop-out answer, and then I'll give you a real answer. The cop-out answer is, it depends who you are. If you're someone like me who loves being in front of other people, then that's not going to be the issue. I think for most people, it's just standing up in front of other people. It's not actually the technical aspects of how to improvise a long-form scene. It is purely standing up and not thinking, oh my God, everyone is looking at me and they're judging how good I am. I mean, the number one phobia is public speaking, or number one fear is public speaking. So if you just happen to be one of the freaks like me, who that's not a problem, then you're very lucky, and that's just a gift, and you just have to run with it. For most people, that would be the thing, I think, is just getting over that initial fear of, what if I'm shit? You know? And to those people, I would say the stakes couldn't be lower. Ain't nobody care if your improv scene is bad. Look around. You're probably either in a class with other people who are shit scared as well, and in class, the whole point is to fail. Classes are supposed to be hard, otherwise you'd get your money back. Or you're doing a show and you're probably just in a room above a pub with a bunch of other improvisers in the audience. Even if you make it through all the levels at your school and you make it onto a team and you make it onto the headline slot, you're still just going to be in a room above a pub performing to 30 people. And just try to lower those psychological stakes for yourself and just enjoy it. That's the whole joy of improv, is it's ephemeral, right? It's going to be gone. It's what we're doing is we're building a sandcastle that's going to get washed away. So don't freak out too much about it and just try to enjoy the play of it. Wow, I've really gone in on this person who's scared. I understand why you're scared, and don't worry, you're going to be okay. The other thing that's hard, I think, is just that thing of what we bring to it from a lifetime of thinking we know what it is. Some people come to it thinking you've got to make gags. Some people come to it thinking scenes need to be dramatic, that they will need a problem that gets solved. When I was doing short form, we literally had a formula for scenes that was platform problem solution. And in my workshops, I'm hitting people over the head and saying, you don't need a problem in your scene. Stop putting problems in your scenes. But for years, I did that in every single scene. People come to improv thinking that every scene is a narrative, when it's not. Unless you're trying to do a narrative improv show, you should approach your scenes like they could last forever. You're just trying to create a pattern that could go on and on and on. People approach their scenes thinking that their character needs to be right and that they need to win every argument, which is the number one reason why we only get 1.5 moves of the game. It's because they're like, this apple's so good. It's not this with the apple. What? Apples are delicious. They're nutritious. I'm hungry. Am I not allowed to enjoy my apple? It's like, stop defending the apple and go back to eating it and then making weird noises. That's what the audience wants. The audience doesn't want you to go on this long tirade about how everyone stops you from eating apples. People come to it thinking that, maybe I've run out of assumptions that people have, but I think it's those things that people turn up with rather than the thing itself being difficult. It's more about the kind of unclouding your mind. Sounds very Karate Kid now, but really just boiling it down to what is actually a very simple mechanic of like, just exist in the space. You're in a bakery. Start kneading the dough. Start putting things in ovens. We don't even really need to know your name or any other specifics. And then at some point, you're going to do something without meaning to that makes someone in the audience breathe loudly through their nose. You're going to do something and someone's just going to go. You're going to hear that. And then whatever you did to get that response, you're just going to do it again and bigger. That's it. It ain't rocket science. But to get to that simple point takes a lot of unlearning. Do you agree? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the more I do it, yeah, it does come back to that. It is a lot simpler than you'd think.
So the last time I saw you improvise was at the Forest. I think you were doing Big Little Place, which I thought was brilliant. And the people in the team on that night were all people that I've seen for years from their very beginnings. I mean, I taught Nathan level 1. I was 20 minutes late to his first week and his second week. And Ben and you and Greg. Greg I never taught, but he's brilliant. And, you know, you're all brilliant. And I think you would probably all agree that now, compared to when you started, you're doing very little. That was a really super patient show where people were just doing the things that they were doing. and then patterns would emerge. And I think you actually knew how to do that years ago, but you thought you needed to do loads of other stuff. So it's not like you learned how to do that.
Yeah, I guess I learnt by slowly experiencing what it feels like to do less and less and calm down. I think for me it took, and I think I still have a way to go in terms of to be fully comfortable on stage, because I came from not a performance background at all. The first performance I ever did was level 3 show at the FA in 2019, and so I think it's taken me a while to just calm down on stage, and even now I still feel that sort of electricity in my brain that stops me making the simple choices, and instead is like searching for all of this.
And I'm not sitting here saying that I've mastered it, right? There's no mastering it. We all continually learn and change our minds, and I still in shows will have moments where I'm doing the simple thing, and then I'll have a little idea and I'll think, this will be good, and then I try and do something a bit clever, and I always regret it. I always think, why did I try and make that thing happen, you know? I mean, the masters of doing very little, TJ and Dave, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners saw them when they came to London recently, and something they said, they did like a hoopla workshop, which I didn't go to, but someone told me, they said, have the audacity to be boring, you know? And it takes audacity because you feel like you're testing the audience's patience. But actually, as an audience member, we've all had that feeling of the less someone is doing, the more we're leaning in. The more we're thinking, oh, what's going on here? What's going to happen? The more that we're being allowed to do our own work and fill in the gaps ourselves. Whereas someone comes out and they're doing loads of stuff, it actually, time slows down the more that is happening. Whereas if you're doing very little, I mean, when I do my scenes at the end of the room show, I feel like I'm not doing anything, and they regularly go 15 minutes. It's bizarre, which is a whole set for if I'm doing it with a team, you know. Not that I'm comparing myself to TJ and Dave, but yeah, do less, guys. Or not, you know, it's jazz. There's no right way.
Who do you look to for inspiration?
I look to you for inspiration because you make stuff happen, and I think that we need more Arams in the London scene who are, you know, putting things together. Who else do I look to for inspiration? I mean, when I started out, the people that inspired me were, you know, Graham, Dixon, Mike O.T. And part of that was they just had like 10, well, Graham had 10 years, Mike had 20 years on everybody else. So, of course, they stood out like nothing because they were comfortable, going back to our, you know, the first conversation. And that's what 20 years gives you, is just you've done it enough and you failed enough that you know that you're going to be okay and that you're comfortable on stage. I very often, and I'm not just saying this, I'm inspired by students, and that's why I continue to teach and love teaching, is the surprising moments that happen in workshops that make you change your mind or think about things in a different way. I mean, a lot of my favorite improv moments have happened in workshops rather than in shows. I did a workshop in Amsterdam in March, and there was this moment where this woman, it was a workshop about improvising by yourself. And the exercise was, we're going to give you a location, and then you're just going to be you're just going to be existing in that space, and then slowly you're going to have an emotion heighten. And the start of the scene was, she was just stood, and there were only 4 other people in the workshop. So there were just 5 of us watching, and she was just stood there, and she just put her hand up and mimed taking a book off the shelf. So slowly, it genuinely took about a minute for her to take the book off the shelf. And it was the most gripping, exciting, inspiring, brilliant moment of improv that I think I've ever seen. I like, you could hear a pin drop, time stopped. It was just magic. And I can't explain it to anybody. You know, if you weren't there, you'll never know what that moment was like. And then, you know, I love that. I love that about improv. The other answer is, sadly, I don't see as much as I would like to, because I've got 2 kids, and if I'm out of an evening, I'm either performing or teaching. But I have been to a few gigs this year where they were kind of, you know, indie teams who I've enjoyed. the dish and their night fluff, obviously. But yeah, I'd love to get out more and see more. I got to get my kids grown, and then I'll be back on the scene, seeing stuff every night.
Do you think, from where I am, and I don't, I'm only 6 years into the London improv scene, but it feels like we might be reaching a tipping point where, Cool Story Bro is getting seen in a 1,000-seater auditorium. We've got articles in broadsheet newspapers. Do you think that improv is on its way to wider acknowledgement and acceptance within the creative arts?
I have no idea. I'm thrilled that there are shows like Cool Story Bro that are filling these big venues, and I think it's great that there are these shows where people are using their celebrity to bring people to improv. And I know that a lot of people seeing Cool Story Bro, for example, that'll be the first improv they've ever seen, and that's great. That's amazing. Get people to see some really good improv, and then hopefully some of those people trickle into the community, right? And you've got ones like They Seem Nice, or May Martin did some, and I think that's really cool. And I hope that people continue doing that, where they can use their TV fame to put on improv shows and bring new people into it. I don't know if improv will ever be cool, and I think that's okay, because there's a freedom in being uncool. I'm not sure that we'll see just improv shows sell more and more tickets. Yes, we'll see lots of people going to see shows with famous people in them. I think if you want to have a show that goes beyond having just improvisers and improv fans in the audience, then you just need to be really savvy in how you package it. What are the best-selling, longest-running, most successful improv shows? They're the ones with the good package, ostentatious, showstoppers. That's pretty much it. Everything else is, this person from The Sewing Bee. Here they are on stage being funny. I don't think we're going to start to see, just Soho Theatre are not going to start just putting on shows where the point of the show is it's really good improv. For example, I was very lucky and cheeky to get my show on there for 5 nights, because I actually got programmed through the theatre department, not the comedy department, which was a cheeky backdoor, but someone just happened to come and see the show who works in the theatre department. And so for them, 5 nights is a short run. And so it was like, oh, well, we've got this short week. Do you want to come and do the show? Whereas, that's a long run for the comedy department. So I don't know. I mean, who knows? No one can see the future. I mean, wouldn't it be amazing if we just suddenly had this huge boom in people wanting to do improv and see improv shows? I think that would be good for the planet. Everybody should be doing improv. We need people to be playful and absorbed and connected more than ever. I don't know. Even in America, where it's meant to be this insanely popular thing, theatres and schools are closing all the time. So I don't know if there is a tipping point. I think there's waves of, definitely the thing that's going up is people's awareness of it, and specifically long form, because for the longest time in the UK, improv meant whose lines it anyway. Whereas now it means probably still that, but maybe a little bit it means, I saw Rose Matafeo do improv, so I know what improv is, or I saw Cool Story Bro, or I saw this, or I saw that, But I still think it's really misunderstood, and it never gets written about properly. Every review you'll see of an improv show is just reviewing the art of improv rather than the actual show, which is very frustrating. So I don't know. It could be cool. I've always thought, clowning had its moment when Dr. Brown won the main award at the Fringe, and suddenly clowning was cool. Everyone was doing clowning. Everyone was taking clowning courses. Stand-ups were taking clowning courses and being more clowny in their acts, and character comedians were all embracing clown, and clown shows were being nominated for shows at the Fringe, Best Newcomer, Best Show. Improv is still ineligible even to be considered. Improv is still not cool. Or I'm like, if clown can be cool, can't improv be cool? Can't improv be that thing. But I think unfortunately people just write it off the way people write off musicals, which is just mad. I don't know. Rant over. Please recruit your friends into the improv cult.
Do you think that improv has changed the way you approach being a father?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, improv is such a big part of who I am that it's kind of impossible to know what I would have been like if I didn't do improv. That's the boring answer. The fun answer is, what is the fun answer? I mean, I try to be playful with my kids. I definitely play games with them that I've played in classes, and kids are great improvisers. The thing that they're not good at is sharing. So you kind of have to let them lead. That's fine. But yeah, the thing that they're really good at, that they teach you, is abandoning ideas, because they will change their mind about what they want to do 10 times, and you just have to go with what they want to do. So that side of it, you have to improvise constantly. I do the way that I am in my room show, which is I try to get into a state of complete surrender to what the audience wants and not judging anything that they say or do, and yes-anding everything that happens. Well, not even anding, just yesing. You know, I have to get into a state of like, whatever anyone says, great. That's the best idea I've ever heard. And I think that is the best version of me that exists, is the person during that hour on that show. So sometimes I'll literally be like, I need to tap into the show version of David Elms, because he would be a lot more fun right now than this tired dad who just wants to do this other thing, but is being asked to do this thing. And, you know, parenting is exhausting and testing, and especially when you've got two. But I think, yeah, getting into that improv mindset of like, yeah, great. You want to do that? Let's do it. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure all improv lessons are life lessons, right? That's not news. So I'm sure it helps me be a father, helps me be a better friend, it helps me be a better podcast guest, better everything. Yeah.
And what do you like to do with your time? It sounds like the small amount perhaps of free time that you don't spend being a father or doing improv. What do you like to do?
You know what? It's been so long since I've had genuine free time that sometimes I just forget what it is that I like to do. Often, if my wife, Liz, is out of an evening and I'm home, because I have to be home because the kids are at home, I'll look forward to it and I'll be like, oh, I've got an evening in by myself. This is going to be great. And then it rolls around and I finish bedtime and I come downstairs and I genuinely have a moment of thinking, what do I do? I've got time by myself. Do I like reading? Should I watch something on TV? I don't know. I like to read. Well, you know, when I had a day job and I was in the office 5 days a week, I used to, you know, read an hour a day on my commute. It's hard now to justify it, being self-employed, to kind of take that time for yourself. But I've got a book in my bag. I used to love running. Haven't run really since my second kid was born. But yeah, running and reading, I guess those would be what I would want to spend my time doing if I could do it. And the real truth is I actually do have time to do those things if I really tried. But whenever I get a moment, I just lie down. But yeah, that's my answer. Improv. Let's fill it all up with improv.
Why not? And on that note, David Elms, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. An absolute joy. I hope some of it made sense. I really had a true aim of not just waffling pretentious stuff about improv theory, but I think when in Rome, right? That's the whole point of the podcast.
I wouldn't let you get away without.
In a way, if you clicked on this episode and then I've just been talking about, you know, my recent holidays, then you'd be disappointed.
I think so.
I've given unfiltered, uncut, pretentious waffle.
You've given us what we want.
And if anything doesn't make sense, then DM me. I'm putting it out there because I love to talk about this stuff and I could genuinely talk about this all day, all night, every day, forever, which is why I think we're in the right biz.
And where can people check out Leap Day?
leap-day.co.uk is the place to go. I hate that dash, but in a way it makes the website sound more like a jingle. leap-day.co.uk. There's also Leap Day Gram on Instagram, which I've been neglecting, but I keep telling myself I'm going to get back to posting on there. You can find me on Twitter, but maybe don't, because it's dead. It's dying. Let it go. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me. Those are the main places. Instagram, the Leap Day website, LinkedIn. And hire me to run something for your organization, because the more of those I do, then the more silly things like jams and choirs I can run for no money.
Great. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Shiny Things podcast. Don't forget to head over to shinythingscomedy.com for loads more improv related posts, where you can sign up to our newsletter so you get all of our new content straight to your inbox. Until next time, I've been Aaron Belection. Happy improving.